We can start to ship vaccine to West Africa for the beginning of the very big phase 3 trials. And those trials really will define exactly how good this vaccine is in preventing Ebola.
Back now on America's Forum, we'll continue the conversation with our co-host this hour, the former chairman of the House Science Committee, Bob Walker, and Newsmax Deputy Health Editor Nick Tate. Now, gentlemen, we just heard from GlaxoSmithKline CEO Sir Andrew Whitty as the pharmaceutical company plans to begin trials on a new vaccine that could potentially battle Ebola. The chairman of the Global Vaccine Division at GSK is quoted as saying, "The initial phase 1 data we have seen are encouraging and give us confidence to progress to the next phases of clinical testing. If the candidate vaccine is able to protect these people, as we hope it will, it could significantly contribute to efforts to bring this epidemic under control and prevent future outbreaks." Mindful of this, Nick Tate, is an Ebola cure somewhere in our foreseeable future?
If not a cure, this is certainly the next best thing. What they found with this vaccine, which is one of 2 that's been developed, the other by Canadian researchers, they found that in a very small number of people, the vaccine did prevent infection with Ebola. So now they're going to try it in a trial involving about 30,000 individuals, primarily healthcare workers and others at big risk of contracting Ebola in Liberia. And if they find that it is successful in that larger group, we're going to see this vaccine used more widely, and it could be a significant step forward. In fact, that could be the legacy of this Ebola outbreak, that it will lead to an actual vaccine that can prevent the disease.
Nick, it's Bob Walker. Do you think that this is something that we can kind of hurry through the process? So often these drugs take years and years and years to come to market. Do you think this is something that we can actually move quickly on?
Well, that's what they've tried to do. This new study is actually being run by NIH in coordination with the drug manufacturer. As you know, Bob, these vaccines can take years between the time they're actually developed and they actually begin helping people. But because of the severity of the outbreak in West Africa with Ebola, and I think the few cases that we've had in the U.S. as well, they've really punched the gas pedal here, and they've really fast-tracked to even get to this point. So if we do have a vaccine that would be available within a year of the beginning of this outbreak, it would be a significant change, much faster progress than we typically see federal officials move. So that's the hope, is that the crisis has driven this positive fast tracking of the vaccine.
Bob, just one question for you on this particular subject. You know, there were some of us in Congress who were skeptical about the UN and about the World Health Organization. As you assess what's gone on with dealing with Ebola internationally, does the World Health Organization deserve praise or criticism?
Well, I think they deserve praise, because I do think that some of the coordination of all of this has come through the World Health Organization. And, you know, while they certainly have had their problems and they've largely had some financial scandals, the fact is that in this kind of situation, it helps to have some global determination of just where the problem exists and how to deal with it.
Now let's switch gears to another topic in science and in the news. That is climate change, what we used to call global warming. A bit of a debate on the Senate floor. Let's listen. I believe Jim Inhofe begins the comments.
At least start having an honest conversation about what carbon pollution is doing to our climate and to our oceans.
Climate has always changed, and it always will. There's archaeological evidence of that. There's biblical evidence of that. There's historic evidence of that. It will always change. The hoax is that there are some people who are so arrogant to think that they are so powerful they can change climate. Man can't change climate.
A friendly amendment to my own roster there. We first heard from Sheldon Whitehouse, Democrat of Rhode Island, then from Jim Inhofe of Oklahoma. But there's something else going on, Bob, besides a Senate debate. Over the weekend, British journalist Christopher Booker reported that temperature data is being faked to show global warming. It's what he calls, quote, one of the greatest scientific scandals of all time. I believe that appeared on the pages of the Sunday Telegraph. Bob, does that confirm some of the suspicions you've had?
Well, it really is disturbing, and it's one of the problems that has been there for some time, and that is that some of this data appears to have been manipulated all the way through. Some years ago, the satellite that NASA has that measures temperature all over the world was not giving them the data that fit with the models. And so they went back and revised the formula by which they calculated the data coming down from the satellite. It's that kind of thing that really undermines the scientific method. Look, the whole thing along the way has been to convince everybody that this is settled science with regard to climate change. Clearly, all of this leads you to the conclusion that there is no settled science, that in fact the idea of settled science is a violation of the entire scientific method. We need to get back to real science to evaluate what's happening in our climate.
Bob, in your estimation, in light of the questions that are being raised about the data, what should the U.S. policy be? What should we be doing here in the absence of hard evidence for one way or the other? I mean, obviously, if global climate change is happening, there could be potential impacts. If there isn't, we could be doing a lot of things that would cost a lot of money needlessly. What should the U.S. position be?
In my view, we're doing some of the right things, and that is we're increasing the amount of research. We've put new satellites in orbits that measure things like the salinity of the ocean. We are doing some things that give us better research data. But we ought not be saying that because of 100 years from now we might have a change. We ought not be undermining our ability to be economically strong, because in the end, our ability to deal with climate is also going to demand economic strength. And so there's a combination of those two things that has to be understood as a part of dealing with something as complex as climate.
About a minute remains, and Bob, I understand the Deep Space Climate Observatory satellite nicknamed Discover will soon be launched. Do you believe it will give us the information we need to settle this debate once and for all?
Well, it will fill in details that we don't know at the present time. I'm not certain that you will ever have data coming down from space that will completely settle the argument. But in all of these satellites, what we're doing is we're getting new data that allows us to be more accurate in our predictions.
And getting the right data, very important in terms of climate change and also in terms of lifestyle change. In that vein, we want to thank our friend Nick Tate, our Newsmax deputy health editor, who has given us a way to survive an upcoming baby boomer financial crisis. It's Nick's newly released book, Da Vinci's Baby Boomer Survival Guide. You can find out more about that by going to the website babyboomers711.com. Bob Walker, hang in there with us. Nick Tate, our thanks to you. And America's Forum will continue following this Newsmax Now update.